The federal government, of course, is taking new steps in its efforts to lower emissions. Today, the Prime Minister said Canada is on track to reduce carbon emissions by 40% above the previous 30% targets by 2030. And the federal budget this week also earmarked up to $17.6 billion in new spending to green the economy. Well, our next guest has a kind of a handbook for individuals and how they can participate in a better, more environmentally friendly world. The book is called Imagine It. Its co-author, Heather Reisman, we also know her as the chair, founder, and CEO of Indigo, is with us now. Heather, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure, Amanda.
So I have to ask, on top of everything else, I know you love books, but boy, you have a lot on your plate. What motivated you to write this one?
So about a couple months just pre the pandemic, I was going for a walk with one of my dearest friends, my co-producer on documentaries that we make, Laurie David. And we always, when we go on our walks, we end up talking about the environment. And she was just so frustrated that we weren't moving fast enough as a world, the United States, and we were talking about where's Canada. And I said to her, you know, I think lots of people want to move, lots of individuals, but often we don't know exactly where to start. And she has been my green living coach for the last 15 years. And I said, why don't we try and take everything that you have learned and that we have learned together, and why don't we try and create a really accessible handbook that sets out where are the places we as individuals create footprints and what we can do about it. And that discussion, revisited many times, it actually became my most joyful activity during this pandemic. Every night we would work on it for well over a year. Every night we would work on it, and it was really a labor of love, really a labor of love.
And there's a fun aspect to it in the sense that everybody likes to kind of self-improve, and you've broken it down into different buckets of ways to do that. Are there some you think of that are more important than others? I mean, you run through our plastic footprint, food, clothing, chemicals. Are there ones that you say start here?
Well, I think a great place to start is with plastic. You know, everybody thinks we recycle, we diligently recycle, so we must be taking care of the plastic problem. A couple of key facts. Only 9% of all the plastic that is ever put in a recycled bin gets recycled. Much of the disposable plastic we use cannot be recycled. And plastic, which is made from fossil fuels, that thing that does all the global warming, it's a cheap product. It's cheap to use plastic, so it's everywhere. It is ubiquitous, and all of the plastic we use, the plastic wrap we bring home, the bags for our produce, the plastic cups, the top of our coffee, our shampoo bottles, everywhere there is plastic. That plastic never goes away. It ends up in giant landfills and at the bottom of our oceans. And so our very first chapter is devoted to plastic, what the problem is with plastic and what we can do. And I have to say, I have been plastic-free in every way at home for the last 4 years, with the most recent being moving to bar shampoo, and it feels awesome, awesome. So plastic, that's a great place to start.
There is something very empowering, obviously, about individuals taking action, and we know that in the end that's where it'll happen. But we also do need governments and regulatory bodies to step up. We've got the climate summit going on today. We had Prime Minister Trudeau offering up even better reduction targets. Are governments doing enough? Because too often, Heather, as you know, people will say, okay, I can reduce my plastic, but I can't keep all of those bottles out of the oceans. That's a bigger problem than me, and it leads to inaction.
Yeah, well, I think that's right. I think the problem always feels so big that we as individuals say, what can we do? Do we need climate enhancing government regulation? Absolutely. I'm a bit optimistic that a couple of things are happening that are pushing us to a tipping point. The experts around the world have been talking about this for 50 years, and it is now dire, and I think a critical mass of people care. I also think this moment coming out of the pandemic, which I hope, by the way, we're going to come out of, I think a lot of us, maybe if there's one good thing that's happened during this time, it's we have become a bit more purposeful, a little more conscious of how we're living. So I'm optimistic as individuals we'll do something. In the end, what this needs is innovation in business. So just to connect the dots to your question, yes, I think governments are going to start to move. It will have some short-term cost and long-term benefit, but we must. I think there's huge interest now in business building up for us all to become more innovative and do things which allow us to reduce our footprint hugely. And then it comes back to, if we as consumers demand it when we vote and when we buy our products, the change will happen. And it is a three-way partnership. We must be aware and demand it. We must vote for people, and we need big-time innovation. Yeah.
We saw big spending in the federal budget this week, Heather. I'm curious for your take on it and whether you saw what you were hoping to see when it comes to help for business.
Oh, well, Amanda, I have to say I was a bit disappointed. I know there's some good things that are happening, and I applaud them for that. I just don't feel there's an appreciation for the depth of the cost of these constant shutdowns and, frankly, our challenge with getting on top of this. I know for us, we are now closed for the third time in many places and cut back. So, I mean, the short answer is I was a bit disappointed, and I know my colleagues, more important, the entire Retail Council was disappointed. But
we did hear that Ontario is mulling paid sick leave. There are other policies coming. Is it too little, too late?
I think we are going to have a short-term burst in the economy because so much money has been flooded. But I think that so many Canadian companies for whom this has cost so much, that's hamstringing the ability to invest, to move forward. And, you know, for many businesses, they won't make it through. So when I think of our industry in total, I do believe we've been underappreciated. I've said to you, Amanda, many times, we were labeled the non-essentials, and I fully believe that as enterprises, we have been treated as if we are throwaway. I do.
You know, everybody's learned a lot through COVID. And as you say, you started writing this manual handbook for individuals pre-COVID. How much was it informed by what we learned from this pandemic?
I think most of the work was a combination of Laurie's 25 years of experience, my 15 years of experience, a lot of research. I cannot tell you the number of places we did research and then connected with. So it's been informed by the research and experience. The one thing that was hugely informed by the pandemic was recognizing the impact of environmental problems on the BIPOC community. So environmental justice, that became a central thesis for us in writing this book, that not only are we all suffering from the environmental issues, but BIPOC suffer disproportionately.